So I'm doing this second talk because Kiro couldn't make it. He's unfortunately living in Japan. Well, unfortunately, fortunately for him, he's living in Japan. But there is some weather problems there in Japan. You probably heard about, and so there was no planes that allowed him to leave here. So this is what I'm using this presentation. It's normally a presentation that takes way longer than half an hour. So I skipped already a lot of slides that were similar as this morning. But I know I had more content than this, so I will just have to be sure that they tell me now it's over. So I know this already.
Can you turn out the lights?
Yes, if somebody can tell me how to do this, or somebody knows how to do this. We have the risk that we turn out the light over there as well, so we'll see what that happens. But that's a good idea, thank you. So, in 1970, Winston Royce wrote a paper. Who was there? Who was in IT or who was already alive? I was not alive. At least we have 2 or 3 people, no, even 5, 6 who were alive. Who wrote a book a document that's called Managing. Thank you very much for the lights. Managing the development of large software systems. And on the second slide, on the second place, there was this, and this is what we all recognize now and that we call waterfall. But actually, so going this, and this is called a waterfall. But actually, when he wrote this, the word waterfall was not used at all in his document. Actually, even worse or better, on the third page he actually wrote, I believe in this concept, but the implementation described above is risky and invites failure. So the person who so-called invented waterfall already told us, don't use this. The rest of the document, I think it's 16 or 17 pages, explains what you should do. One of them of these things is, hey, we should go back and interact. Exactly what we're doing in Agile. So he already explained what we should do. But most people, and a lot of journalists and other people, just read the first few pages, they looked at that first thing and they said, hey, this looks like a waterfall. And they called it waterfall and they said everybody should work this way. Which is exactly the opposite as what he did. Most of his time, and he and his son were actually working to tell people, this is not what I meant. This is not, because people were saying, Winston is telling everyone you should do waterfall, which is exactly the opposite of what he's trying to do. So, fast forward a few things, and then we have, it's probably hard to read, February 11 to 13, 2001, a few white people, men, they gathered together, and like I said this morning, for me the most important part, I hope it's working, yes, is we're uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others doing it. If you look at some of these names, actually a lot of them, for example Ken Beck, I just had a talk about, with Tom Beck I think, about Ken Beck, explaining how he still worked, or just in a few months ago, he was still working at Facebook, actually doing the work, not just consulting, not just telling people what to do, but actually coding and doing the work. On that, maybe first, who has read the manifesto? Okay, a lot of people. Who has read that second page? So less people. Who has signed it? Even less people. Okay, it's no longer possible, but it used to be for a long time. So, what is this? All this agile and lean stuff? And this is a slide I took from Henrik Nieberg with all these different kind of things. I actually get this question a lot from customers who say, we want to do Agile by the book. And my answer or my question always is like, which Agile book? Because this is all about Agile and it's one of different books and many contradict, like I said this morning. I can give you an example of a product owner who was actually asking for help, and the way that she was asking a lot of the questions, she was asking a lot of how questions. And like I said this morning, she was basically asking or looking for a silver bullet. I already said this morning, we shouldn't use a silver bullet, we should be very careful about using a silver bullet. And I have a quote about that, but completely not of the Agile or the IT world. Andy DeFranco has a sentence that says, every tool can be used as a weapon if you hold it right. And if you look for a silver bullet, you have to be very careful that you're not a werewolf, that they're not using the silver bullet against you, which is what happens in a lot of cases when we try to implement silver bullets. I talked about Davis this morning, Dude's Law, that we talked about. The value is really in why over how. And when people ask how questions, when they want to implement Agile, a lot of people focus on the how. But if your why is 0, well, you end up with not much. I'm not saying that how should be 0 either. In this formula, if I would use it, that might be end up in a very high number, but that's not what we're about. It's really like we should we should also look at why. Why are we doing certain things? And one of the things I want to do when I talk about Agile is focus about the fact that yes, we can. There's multiple things that we can do, and sometimes we don't know. And for example, if you would do firewalking, if I would stand here and there's a fire here, there's one thing that you should do is once you start walking, you should not stop halfway. This is also the same thing with Agile. When you start doing it, at that moment you should just keep stepping until you're at the end, because you have to do it. You might doubt a little bit before you go on, and then you don't do that, and that's fine as well. But once you start stepping, please don't stop in the middle, because then you will burn your feet. You will not burn them when you're in the middle of doing it. So that's also an important thing. And so, yes, we can do some of these things. In Agile, one of the other things is that we also should think always long-term over short-term. Yeah? We should always think about long-term. If you have to decide between long-term and short-term, long-term is the thing you need to think about. But that doesn't mean that short-term is completely impossible or unimportant. Because if in short-term it means that if you think just about long-term and because of short-term problems, the project or the company dies, that's also not a long-term solution. So we should have that balance all the time. And one way of doing that is what I learned from Clanton Covey. Dr. Covey says you should always begin with the end in mind. Now this is an example of how I used in 2010. I was going with my family to the south of France, and my son was needed to do some homework for the Belgian school if he wanted to come back to Belgium. And at some point, my partner comes back to me and said, we'll have trouble because I don't think he's going to make it. I don't think he's going to finish all the exercise and everything he needs to do to go back. So I said, okay, let's start. Let's count the number of pages, the number of work he still has to do. It was very near to 300. Already at that time I thought, wow, he was 8 or 9. And already so many pages he needed to do. We counted later on, it turns out in that year he had to do 3,000 pages for school, that they do in school and that they would do at home, which is already a lot. So I made him count to that, and then we looked at, okay, this is the 23rd, or it was the 22nd, I don't know, June, and okay, he's going back to Belgium the 1st of September. So I made him calculate, if you're here, we have that many pages, how many pages you need to do to arrive there. So that means, I think it's about 7 pages that he had to finish every day. Now we started to understand the problem, because the goal was, what he was doing, he was not going to school on a Wednesday, and on a Wednesday he did 7 pages a day, and the other days he might do 1 or 2 pages. But of course that means you won't get there. So that's interesting. Okay, then I said, but somewhere here, we're going on holiday. So you can either be finished there, but then you have to work throughout our holiday. So he said, no, that's not what I'm going to do. So he preferred to be finished by then. So again, a new calculation, I don't know, 280 divided by the number of days. Okay, so now that's 10 pages a day I have to finish. And if you want to be a little bit earlier, that's, I don't know, 12 or 15 to be ready there. All calculations he did, all math that he did, well, he likes math, he did good math and everything, but still, these are the calculations that he loved to do, because now he understood why he was doing that. And then a very interesting dynamic happened, because instead of we asking him every day, have you finished, have you worked on it, we never had to ask him anymore. We wouldn't need to push anything, he pulled it in. Every day, you can see, this is actually something I made in Google, but it was what it was at that time. So basically he did these 10 pages and sometimes 11, so he was a little bit ahead. And then one day I came home and he was very proud. Dad, I did 22 pages, you can see it here. And I thought, okay, interesting, you only needed to do 11. So I thought, what will happen the next day? And very predictable, what you see in a lot of companies as well, the next day, almost nothing. And the next day, nothing. Completely nothing. I didn't ask anything, I didn't say anything, I just said, okay, just put it there on your burnout chart, and then right. So when he put it there, he said, Dad, I probably should start doing again, because otherwise I run into problems. I said, yeah, you probably should. That's exactly what he did. So in the end, he ended, I think 2 days earlier, having finished everything. Completely a pull system. When I prepared this talk this weekend, when I rehearsed it, he listened to it and said, no, Dad, that didn't happen. He doesn't even remember anymore. It's 8 years ago. So I thought I had learned him something. Maybe he's already lost everything. But still, it worked at that time. We never had to push anything. As parents, a lot more nicer. So begin with the end in mind. We thought about how much work you need to do, how much time, and he did all the calculations. Something related to that is, it's actually at the same company where I was doing it. These are 4 big stories, or actually 3. This is a line for problems, so things that were in production. And these are 3 stories, large stories that I wanted to do, and this is a 2-week sprint. And as you can see, we're halfway, and okay, the first one, we're done already, or almost done. We still have some things to do, but they're busy. The second one, and so then somebody on the team that I was coaching decided, I should put a paper, because we shouldn't start this 3rd story. Because if we start working on this 3rd story, we'll never finish anything. Because then we will work on all 3, but we won't finish anything. And that's exactly what happened. A week later, they finished the first 2, and then they removed this paper, and then they started a few of the tasks for this 3rd story. So in the end, they finished at least 2 of the 3. Didn't finish everything, but at least in the right order, in the right priority, they did some things. This is a developer who added that same thing to the board, just to make sure that his friends or his colleagues didn't start working on stuff that was less important at that time. This is a truck which we use to move to the south of France. Who knows what this word means? Yakni. Andreas? You ain't gonna need it. So this is, imagine, this is a family of 5 people, so my partner and I and 3 children. This is the only thing we took. We were really happy that we limited what we took with us. But if you see, this large box is a very large television that we couldn't use because in the south of France we never were able to get television for whatever reasons. I will not go into details anymore. But so we even took too much with it. But still, I felt really proud. This is just one truck. We moved everything. You have to imagine, me and my partner, we drove 1,000 kilometers to the south of France. We had to unload the truck all by ourselves. Well, not all by ourselves. Basically, one of us. The other was dealing with the 3 children. So we back and forth helped a little bit. But so this is. We limited really what we would took with us because that was giving us problems. And I was still proud of it till I saw this picture. This is a picture from 2 friends of us who at the same moment lived out of their suitcase basically all over the world. They were traveling and working at the same time. This is why I think if you look very carefully you can find 4 computers, you can find a few iPads, you can find a few Kindles and stuff like that. Okay, they don't have children, so I can say this is why we have so much more, but I'm pretty sure that I personally took way more with me than these 2 people. And okay, they had to buy a few extra things because they had not enough this or that, but if I look back, I probably bought more stuff for the same period than they did. This is, every time I think, hey, I'm limiting what I need, there's somebody who's doing it a lot better. Long term, what does that mean long term? Long term for me means that we should make it possible later to change stuff. So this is a few older computer screens that show you a build system. So everything is green, and so the build hasn't been broken for 35 days and 35 days and 13 hours. Do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing? Who thinks it's a good thing? What? It is kind of good. So what's good about it? It's 35 days that it has never been broken. The team is really proud of that. Hey, look how good we are. We have so many tests and every time we check something and nothing is breaking. I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible for 35 days to never break anything. I think this means that this team doesn't have enough tests and that basically you don't see the things that you're breaking. I agree, it's very nice that for 35 days it's not broken. I prefer actually it breaks, maybe not every day, but it breaks once in a while, but that you can fix it very quickly. But not that it's never broken, because it probably means that you don't see the problems that are there. Maybe they're just wonderful and they never make mistakes and they have all of that possible as well. I doubt it. Another thing with Agile is you should just do it. This is a presentation I did with my son. We actually had a few presentations, but this was the first time we talked about our experience moving with the whole family to the south of France. And when I was asked to do this, so I was asked during the day and at evening, and I asked at home, I'm asked to talk about that. Would you be interested as a family to talk with me? And of course, this kid, 10 years old, I don't know, 8 or 9 at that time, is like, yeah, of course I can do this. Yes, we will do that. Okay. How will we do it? And of course, he was doing it. He's a perfectionist, which means he wanted to lay out full plans on how we would do it. He wanted us to decide up front who will talk about what and everything. He said, no, let's not do it like that. Yeah. That same evening, we just grabbed a couple of index cards and I asked my kids, give me some ideas, what should we talk about? So they gave some ideas, I wrote them down, and then when the older two went to bed, I worked with Joppe to just make sure that we had a kind of red line and let's talk about that. When he went to bed, I created some slides with it, with the topics in there, and added some pictures, but not everywhere. So the next day, what we did, he said, okay, let's now decide who will talk at what slide. I said, no, let's just do it. So I put on my computer, I put it onto a television screen and said, let's just do it. And so I asked my children, every time you see a picture, when you think you can say something about it, you just say, okay, I'm going to say something about it. So we practiced that Monday morning 5 times, or Monday afternoon, so the evening 5 times. We did that in the next 5 days, and on Saturday we did the presentation. We just did it gradually and everybody practiced it. So we practiced it like 25 times or 30 times. Which for him was really crazy because he really thought we should practice and decide up front who will talk about what. Which makes it, that was the perfect plan that he wanted to do. But by practicing it and multiple times, they all knew everything and they actually could jump into each other to help each other out when we were on stage and doing that. And as you can see, he was really, really relaxed the very first time that we actually did that on stage. Which he did, repeated a few years back, I think at Agile Kiev, I think we did something. Shared vision. For me, Agile, when we work in projects, it's really important to have a shared vision. What I don't mean with that is that we should have a shared vision statement. You sometimes see that in companies as a very large statement that was invented by the CEO or the board of directors, but that's not what I call a shared vision. A shared vision is something that you create with the whole team. We just had the football thing in July. For me, a shared vision is that when you have one of these players not looking at the other side, passing the ball to the other side and knowing that his team member will be there because they have just practiced and they know each other so well. Without looking, they know what they're doing. That's what I also mean with a shared vision in a team and in a company. The same picture I used this morning, these are the people, and Mike is not here, but there's a few others, that created the AIL conference. Now, the AIL conference is a very interesting conference on how it was created. Originally it started out me and Jürgen Appelo tweeting a little bit because we were all disappointed that almost no Europeans were selected to talk at a large Agile conference in the United States. And in one of our discussions and our rants, let's call it that way, we just said, you know what, instead of we going to the US, at the same time we'll have a conference in Europe and we'll do it all with all of us. Which of course was not really a good idea, but still, just 2 months later, we had that conference, not at the same time, a few months later, in Europe. If you compare it to a large Agile conference that happened in the United States, it was very interesting. Because that large conference in the United States is planned like 2 years ahead. They already reserve the location where they go because they have so much people and blah blah blah. they have to reserve the restaurant where they're going to eat with the whole people. They have to plan all these things. We had less than 3 months to plan everything and do everything, and that was done, basically invented by these people that never ever worked together physically. They just had the idea, and I think at Agile, at XP, they talked to each other. A few of these, but most of that what happened completely offline. Most of these people had never before even met each other, and they were able, because they had a shared vision, idea, to create a conference. And because of that, they did all the kind of strange things. They said, oh, we don't know how many people will come, so we cannot go talk to restaurants and order for, I don't know, for 300 people, because we don't even know if there will be 50 people or 100 people or 200 people. So they said, okay, and even if they would do it, go to a large restaurant or something and say, we want to have a dinner for 20 people of 200. They had to put money there that they didn't have, and they had to reserve that and say, we will be sure that we will be there. So they decided, let's do something else. And they said, okay, we will create what's called dinner with a stranger. And so instead of just one large restaurant, they called up, in that same location, they called up 10 or 20 restaurants, and they said, is it possible to have a dinner with 10 people? And so basically they instead of just having one location, they said, okay, we'll invite people to go to restaurants with all the other people they don't know at the conference and just have a local conversation about it. And cancelling a restaurant for 10 people, that's a lot easier. You can just say, well, sorry, it doesn't happen, and okay, that's actually a lot easier. And that's a lot of these ideas they all created because they had to think everything through in a completely different way. Another thing that's really important with Agile and all these kind of things is to have focus. Who knows this? Who has seen this tomato timer? Who knows what it means or what it's used for? The Pomodoro technique. The Pomodoro technique I really like. It's invented by a student who was really having troubles studying, like many students. And at some break, he went to the kitchen and he found the timer from his mother that she was using in the kitchen, and said, maybe I have troubles focusing and I have troubles learning. Maybe I should just see what's the time I can do. So arbitrary, he took 25 minutes and said, I'm going to focus for 25 minutes, then take 5 minutes break, then 25 minutes and 5 minute breaks. Turns out that was a very good number, because there's all kind of research these days that shows that actually most people cannot focus for longer than 30 minutes. And so it's actually a very good technique. I'm using this also a lot. For example, I dread doing accountancy and all these kind of things, but if I work with Pomodoro, I can actually do 25 minutes, focus on accountancy, not get distracted by email or Twitter or other kind of things. I can just focus for 25 minutes. The nice thing is, same thing with my kids, I just have to point to the timer and they see, oh, it still is 1 or 2 minutes, I leave Daddy alone and he will come back to me. I'll just make a sign that to go back there. There's actually a company in Belgium, I don't know if they do it, they still do it, but 10 years ago, there's actually a company that worked on Pomodoros with the full team, like 20 people all programming 25 minutes, 5 minute break, 25 minutes. I could not do that as a whole team, but they did that for at least more than a year. Very interesting experiment to do that. Another thing that's really important in Agile is trust. This picture itself is already very interesting. I was organizing a training, a 1-week training, where people would learn about leadership and for the people who are interested in the core protocols. And I had my camera, and what I did is I gave my camera to the organizer, to the students, and I said, you know what, you're here from Sunday afternoon till Friday afternoon. Here is my large digital camera. You can use it the whole week. I don't care about it. Do whatever with it, what you want. Make sure that I get it back by Friday. So by Friday, I get it back, and I see a lot of dark pictures that I was about to delete and said, let's maybe just put them on my computer, and this is one of them. I technically know how they did it, but I'm not able to replace that. They even had larger words like, I don't know, with 10 letters and stuff like that. So it's a very nice example of how a team of people could create stuff that with my material that I cannot reproduce. just trusting them, giving them for a full week, and letting them experience with that. But Agile is not just about being all nice and everything. It should also show you the reality. The people from Xebia call that brutal transparency. I'm not going to go into the details, but if you would look here, this is an emergency lane, and you can see something that's a very high priority, and something else that's blocking that. And the agreement with this team is that there could only be one thing that's happening. Now, this is a board that is just outside the CEO's room. So he passes by every day, and one day looks at it and says, Yves, I think this thing is blocked already for 2 days. What's there? Well, actually, this is something that you could unblock, and you have already 3 or 4 emails and a few SMSs and phone calls that we left you to unblock this, but we can't reach you. So thank you for stopping by, because 5 minutes later he made some phone calls and it was completely unblocked. Brutal transparency, showing you, hey, this is a real issue, a production issue, and this is even very important, but we cannot start doing it because this is blocking it. Very brutal transparency, showing the problem. Yes, we all have emails and all the other things, but they didn't work because he has, I don't know how many emails in his inbox. And because it was just outside his door and he passed by and he tried to look at least once a day at it, he learned some of these things. Agile is also about facing reality. This is a picture from my son, who at some point thought, okay, I'll climb in a tree. And when he climbed in it, it's kind of hard to see it like this, but he's really afraid because it's actually a lot higher. It's not that high, but still it's a lot higher than he was expecting to it. Now, many parents have the tendency to then say to them, hey, to this kid, this is not the problem. But that's actually not a very good solution, because if you have a kid like this, scared like this, telling this person it's not a problem, it's not helping, for him it is a problem. The message I gave him is like, I see you're scared, I know you think it's a problem, but I think it will be okay. And somebody, when I talked about that, came to me and said, you actually said that message twice, because I was taking a picture, which sends him the message like, okay, I have the time to take the picture before I start to take care of you. Sending the message, yes, you might see it's a problem, I understand this, but I think it will be okay. Facing reality. Another thing that is really important in Agile is, if you talk about Agile and Lean, at least it has to have some Japanese words in it. So, Genchi Genbutsu, I have to write it and look at it before I can pronounce it. It basically means the information is not here. The information is not in meetings and in everything. The information is on the floor. In Toyota, new managers are asked to stand on the floor for 1 day to look around and to understand the normal situation, so that when they walk in and there is a problem, that they immediately would recognize and see the difference. Walk around. So this is one of the things I'm asking people as a coach, as a scrum master, any kind of person. Make sure you understand what's the normal way of working, that you walk around and don't rely on meetings for information. I want to end up with, I have a few more minutes, with build quality in. We really find it important that we have no broken windows, so we want to build quality in. There is some stories about in a city where they left a very expensive car in a very bad neighborhood, and when they left it there, nothing happened. They left it there 1 hour, 2 hours, a few days, nothing happened. And then they moved it just half a block, and they broke a window, and in less than a few hours the whole car was wrecked. Because once there's a broken window, people think, oh, it's okay, we can do this. And this is what happens in a lot of cases as well with software. Once there are problems, it's easier to get more problems. Now typically when I bring this and I say we should fix all these problems, this is the reaction I get. Yeah, Yves, that's all very nice, but my software looks like that. Who thinks his software looks like this? I'm surprised to see so little hands, because most of the time people say this is what's happened. So how do we deal with that? in the United States, they have something that's called the BoyScout rule. And the BoyScout rule says that if you're... I don't know where it moved. The BoyScout rule says if you go to a location and if you, as a Boy Scout, and if you're there and it's bad, you make sure that you leave the camp place nicer than you found it. So if this is the problem, you don't fix everything. You just fix it well enough so that it's nicer today than it was yesterday. And if you keep doing that, in less than a year, it's much nicer. It's much cleaner. So that's the thing. And so basically, my brother-in-law has a restaurant. And if I go there, it's very interesting because every time I go into his kitchen, it seems like he's cleaning. For me, it looks like he's cleaning much more than he's cooking. If you have to just go, if you have a restaurant where there's an open kitchen, you have to watch the cook. Basically, every time they're cooking at the same time, they're cleaning something. And when a dish is finished, they will start cleaning some more. And when the first hour or whatever, there's some extra time, they will clean some more. And before they go home, they clean some more. And the next morning, they clean some more. It looks like they're cleaning all the time. This is basically how I think we should do the same thing with code. Yeah? We should code, but at the same time clean it a little bit at a time. Yeah? If I'm cooking, I have to admit, then I just cook, and afterwards, when it's finished, I will start cleaning. That's how a lot of people work. And if you're not professional, if you just do it, that's how it works. But it's actually much easier if you do it constantly. There would be another option. Yeah? There would be an option to not clean anything. Imagine that I go to a restaurant and say, well, I know typically your steak, what is it? About 20 euros for a steak. Well, today I only have 10 euros. You know what? You make my steak and you don't clean while you're making my steak, and I give you 10 euros because it's cheaper. Maybe that works. And maybe this person thinks, hey, I found a new way. I just make cheap steaks and I sell them for 10 euros. But probably in less than a year or 2 years, he would call me back, and when I come back and say, well, Yves, you had a lot of cheap steaks for now. Let's today, you pay 50 euros because I have to clean for the next week because my whole kitchen is a mess and I have cockroaches everywhere and it's a very dirty kitchen. I have to clean for 1 week to clean it up, and then you can continue back the next year for having steaks for 10 euros. What will I do at that time? Like most of you will say, what? You have a dirty kitchen for that one? I will just probably walk away and buy for 10 euros, I don't know, I go to a McDonald's or something like that. Which is exactly what we're asking in software a lot. They tell us we only have a limited amount of money, so we make it and we don't clean up our shit, and then we're in a mess, and then a year later we ask, oh, big manager, please can you give me a large amount of money so I can clean up the mess? That doesn't help us. Thank you very much.